Pat, ready? Oh, wait, no, it's you.
I'd like to call the meeting of the Historic Resources Board meeting for September 2nd, 2014 to order. Will you please rise with us and pledge allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is my mic on?
Mine is. Okay.
May we have roll call?
Commissioner Franco.
Present.
Commissioner Roderos.
Excused absence.
Commissioner Dubert.
Absent.
Excused absence.
Commissioner Gillard.
Here.
And Commissioner Garrett.
Here.
That works?
Yeah.
Now we're in business. The first item on the agenda was call to order, Pledge of Allegiance, and roll call. We've taken care of that. Number 2 is public comment. At this point, we can ask anyone to make a comment which is not, or which even may be on the agenda, because this is not a special meeting. Do we have anyone who wishes to make a public comment?
That's for the
Actually, I would like to make one. This is birthday week for San Juan Bautista. We put a display in the window, the display cabinet there this morning, calling your attention to the fact that 45 years ago we had a centennial here in town, celebrating 100 years. So if we do all the math, in 5 more years we'll be 150 years old, so we want to be ready for that. That's one of the things I have to say. And the other is that on this weekend, the Native Daughters and the merchants downtown are celebrating Admission Day of California to the United States. So please read what's on the windows and on the shops and on the Native Daughters Adobe downtown and join them in celebration of Admission Day. We are the 31st state in the Union. And maybe you don't remember, but John Charles Fremont was one of our first senators, and he was here in town years ago, and he was at the peak, and all of that fame goes along with him. So thank you for listening to what's going on in San Juan this week. Our item number 3 is informal project review. Any potential and/or future project applicant may present his project to the HRB, Historic Review Board, for informal project review for the purpose of gaining information as preliminary feedback only. No formal application is required, and no action will be taken by the Historic Review Board on any item at this time. A, replace roof, 401 2nd Street, the Crane House. Do we have a staff report?
No, there's no staff report on the informal. The applicants are in the audience and
good.
Make their presentation.
So if you would please come forward, introduce yourself, let us know who you are and what you would like to do.
Good evening. My name is Ethan Andrews. This is my wife, Lauren Grant, and we live at the Crane House, that house right there. We moved in about less than a year ago, and it is in desperate need of a new roof. It's got several holes in the roof and several leaks that we discovered during one of our last rainstorms. I think we're probably the only people in town that are happy that there was a drought, because it probably would have been a lot worse to our insulation in our attic. So we've contacted a number of different roofing contractors for bids, and have gotten several bids for the job, and we have about 3 more coming in. And we've asked about getting it patched, and everyone says it's just, there's no point in patching it because the holes are so big, it's so old, it just, you need to tear it off and redo it. We've basically been looking at asphalt composite shingles. We looked at the wood shingles, but the price was out of our price range. It was almost double the cost. And everyone told us it was an inferior product because it wasn't as safe and it wouldn't last as long. So we have several different colors here that we're looking at that match the color that's on the roof now. So hopefully it'll be as seamless as possible from the old roof to the new roof. And that's it.
Any questions?
Could you kind of elaborate on what the insurance people told you about replacing the roof as it is? Yeah, that's important, you know. That.
Yeah, that it would be more expensive for our insurance rates, or if we could even get insured, because it's not, from what they said, fire safe. And we do have a wood burning stove in there, and that is one of the primary heat sources.
Can we get public comment on this
Would like to talk
issue?
to- Well, I think tell him why he's here to begin with.
What?
It's got to be reviewed by explain to the public that it's got to be reviewed by the Historic Resources Board. Because it's in a historic district.
Well, Ernest and I are having a little discussion here about that it would later be reviewed by the Historic Review Board, but I am not positive about that because it might be declared a minor
Subdivision, yeah.
minor repair rather than a major, and therefore it is
yeah.
not subject to further review or public comment. So,
As you recall, the commission kind of directed the thing that on minor, even though they're in the historical district, on minor projects that are beyond the threshold, that those could be handled administratively if they're bringing it back to the similar architectural standards. You know.
I know that this is just an informal project review, and we're just talking about what is a minor repair. However, for most of us who live in San Juan, this is the most important house in the main part of town, and I'm sure you were aware of that when you bought the house. Yes. So I have a couple of questions so that we kind of clear the air here of exactly how historic this house is and bring us up to date on some of the stuff. When you were doing research before you bought the house, were there some interesting things that you would like to share with us about the Crane House?
Well, my wife's more of a historian.
Is she the historian?
I mean, we did was it Maria Sanchez? We kind of read the book that was written by her descendants.
Actually, I have a copy of that today, in case you didn't have one.
Yeah, so we kind of perused through that. Very interesting, sad story. Although I'm sure you probably know more about it than we do.
And did you see the real story by Bill Roddy online?
Yep.
Great. And did you ever go to the museum and see all of the ancestry of Maria Encarnacion Sanchez?
Not yet.
So you've done a lot of research and you know what a jewel you have, so you know how cautious we're going to be. Wanted to give you fair warning that we might be pretty cautious. I actually believe that Bill Roddy gave the Historical Society a copy of the deed from Mr. Sanchez, so we have that down in the museum. But back to the basics. Pat, do you have any remarks? You're the construction guy that we know.
Is that house registered with the federal or the state?
I don't think it's registered.
It's not registered, so it's just a historical house.
It's just local.
And you want to change the shingles to comps?
Yes.
I mean, I know the insurance is high on shingles, but the state might have, since it's a historical house, they might be able to get a grant
Yeah.
and put shingles on it.
We-
It's very possible.
We have an inventory of historic homes in San Juan Bautista, and you call those DPRs. It's Department of Parks and Rec DPR. How it got there, I don't know. But every house on within San Juan Bautista that's 50 years old or older has been identified. Strangely enough, in the 2006 version online, 401 2nd Street does not appear. It is in the 1981 version that you would find this material. I think that it probably was left off by Galvin and Associates for some reason. You may have looked online and found that 405, the next door house, has 2 pictures, and yours is skipped. So that's an amazing. I have prepared this for you. If have you already got a copy from the 1981 version?
No.
This is, everyone in town has one of these if you have a house. Whether or not it was on a register or not. It is within our historic district, and so we're taking very seriously looking at changing anything about that house. However, I know you know that the windows upstairs have been replaced with not wood windows and so forth. So there have been changes that have been made. I had heard a rumor that you were thinking of replacing the roof and putting dormers back in. Is that an accurate bit of gossip?
No, I mean,
No.
that was like, I wonder what the house would look like if it had more natural light on the second
Yes.
story.
Do you know that it used to have that?
No.
The first time I ever went upstairs in that house, before Bill Roddy had it, when Nita Harrell and her husband lived there, it was an absolutely beautiful room, full of southwestern light flooding in a whole window wall. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it wasn't divided. It was a great workspace, probably a dance place because she loved to dance. When Bill Roddy got it back, he had it returned to the slope roof that you see now, and the division of the bedrooms came along afterwards. So the interior has been modified, but the roof is back the way it was. And I think that we would suggest that is such a signal that that's the Crane house, that we would want you to be sure not to disturb the shape of the roof.
No plans to change the roof line.
The fact that the review is it major or minor, if you were going to change it, if you're going to just replace the roof with exact materials, I'd say that's minor. If you're going to make a change, maybe that should come to the board.
So the decision of whether it's major or minor would go back to staff, and then they would help.
No, we can make-
decide. But we can't make a decision tonight.
No, but you can determine whether he should be applying to the Historic Resources Board or just
to the,
City Hall.
and we can make that determination even though this is not an action item.
No, it's not. This isn't an action. This is just direction.
Direction?
If the question was, where do I go now?
But also what the VFW down there, they've went from shakes to tile roof, and that's a historical building too. But they didn't come in front of us either, right? How'd they get the permit? That's city limits, right?
It's in the city limits.
For the VFW. And then the brewery house, we let them put composition shingles on the brewery house.
And what they took off was wood?
It was wood, yeah. It was comps over top of wood. No, and then they took the old roof off, they put the comps back on it.
And Lux Library, I think was another one. And then
So there you
the Native Daughters, they went with a metal roof, but it was
It's
A
different
metal.
than the wood, yeah.
They
And
have
it's a
never
lot
had-
more expensive to put on wood shingles than it is for comp shingles. And you got your fire hazards and all that stuff.
So when we go back to the California Historic Building Code and look at the Secretary of Interior standards and so forth, I am always reminded of my own situations dealing with historic restoration. And the word feasible stands out in my mind very, very clearly. It has to be what is feasible for the property owner, in my opinion.
And that's why you did comps on your house.
Yes. Now, I we have people in the audience who might be helpful in helping us resolve this situation. So do we have any speaker cards who could address these owners? Could we go into public comment for just this issue?
Thank you, members of the Historic Resources Board, Carvonk 609 3rd. The house is historic. It's on our local register, and it's probably eligible for the National Register, I would think. It's purported to be the oldest wood frame house in California. I don't know if that's actually been documented. It does have a very unique roof, and I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about the Historic Building Code, which is in, I think it's Chapter 18. It's in Title 24. And there's a whole section on fire and, how compromises can be made as long as life safety issues are maintained. And that's often used with historic buildings, especially ingress and egress and things that you may not be able to comply with under the regular building code. I'd just like to talk a little bit about the wood shingles. Originally, it would have had a wood shingle roof, and it does have one now. So putting on composition would be a major change to its historic character. I've had a wood shake roof put on a house, and the city there required Class B minimum, and my wood shakes complied with Class B. My insurance did not go up, and it's considered very safe. And if you go online and go to the Cedar Institute, you can read about how they now make wood shakes and wood shingles fire retardant. They put under high pressure, they put some kind of chemical in it to make it wood, to make the wood fire retardant. So I'd just like to let you know that wood shingles would be historically appropriate for the house, certainly given its significance. Obviously, the decision is up to you. Mr. Ron Polk, who owns the clock shop, there was a big issue about that when he came forward before the Historic Resources Board. He wanted to put on the historic wood shingles, and we had a big go-around with the fire marshal, and finally he was permitted to put on wood shingles, although he did put on the composition on the backside where it can't be seen. It's not within the public right-of-way or public view. Unfortunately, this house is on a corner, so it's visible from really all sides. But again, I just want to bring to your attention the Historic Building Code and the fact that wood shingles, I'm quite sure, meet minimum of Class B. Maybe you can even get Class A fire retardant shingles. And those are my comments.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
You live in a house that's built in 1800, right? On 3rd Street?
Yes.
And it does have composition shingles on it?
Yes, it has composition shingles because it had those on there when we purchased it. But if we ever need a new roof, hopefully not too soon, I would like to put the wood shingles back on. And I know they probably are more expensive than the composition, but it is historically accurate. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? This is really informative and educational so that a conversation can be had about this. In case it comes forward to a historic review board, public will again be invited to participate.
Can I be the speaker for my name's Ann Hall. I live in Hollister. I'm actually here on a completely different item, but I'd just like to comment that I do have a historical house, and when we purchased it, it had wood shakes, and we had to go through the process of, they were 90 years old, so we had to replace the roof. It was starting to fail. And I will say, from the homeowner's perspective, the wood shakes are more expensive, and they are impregnated with, you can get them impregnated with fire retardant, but they make the lifespan of those shingles much shorter. So it's, in the insurance company, there's two questions they ask. They ask about your roof, and they ask if you're tied to the foundation. Those, you know, so those things make a difference to the insurance company, and it's a significant cost to the homeowner. So it's not impossible, but it's not something that I think is an arbitrary decision either. So that's just my comment from personal experience.
Thank you. Anything more from staff? We'll bring it back here. I know you came here to be informed, educational experience. Do either, we, oh, another person. Okay, excuse me, I got my reading glasses on.
I'm Karen Gretisoff. I live at 1108 3rd Street. I do work for an insurance company, and I deal with homeowners insurance quite a bit. And I can speak on which shaped roofs are quite a bit more expensive in the regards of insurance on home, because they do tend to fall more toward the fire hazard on the home. Understanding that the home is a historic, but also looking at feasible for the homeowner, it is more costly to have a wood roof versus a composition roof.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody? I should put on my long view glasses. What we are missing today is our two partners who are not here. They always bring such interesting information for us to mull. So,
Well, I think the question now is where does this go?
yes.
Does the applicant go for a permit to put asphaltic shingles on there, or does the applicant come to the Historic Resources Board for a review to determine whether he can deviate from what's there? I think that's the only thing we've got to decide. Direction.
But I'm confused about not making a decision.
It's not a decision. We're not telling him
We're
what he
just
can or
making a
can't do.
suggestion to the staff.
No, to him. If he asks the question, where do I go from here? You're not going to wait another month for a vote. He's got to have an answer.
Is that your question? Where do you go from here?
Yes.
So what is,
Staff, do you have a comment on this?
No, I just, it's a judgment call of whether it's going to be a major or minor improvement,
Another thing is, the cedar shingles I make today are not as good as the one I used to make in the old days. And they don't last as long. And when they put this fire retardant stuff in them, they don't even last 15 years. The composition shingle, you could get 45-year to 50-year comp, and they make them look just like shingles now.
Maybe that's what we're looking for. What will make it look like what it is, even though it isn't?
They make comps that look like shingles. We would have to see a sample of them.
Which means we'd have to bring it back to the Historic Resources Board.
We would have to see them.
I think I might see some photos of some of the options that they gave us that were supposed to match the shingle.
so your advice to them would be?
I mean, the shingles are going to cost about 4 times more than the comps are going to cost. And that's a lot of money to put a roof on a house that you're not going to get a long lifespan out of. And they do make them. He's probably got a picture of them there that they look just like shingles.
Would you want him to bring in samples?
We could have a meeting, a special meeting, and have him bring some samples in. And all the board members will be here and make that decision. Because winter's coming pretty quick, you know, it won't be long.
So do I have the picture clear? If you are going to change to asphalt, that would be, you would have to, according to us today, you would have to consider it a major application. If you're going to stick with shingles, it would be a minor. So we have informed you of that, and we don't, and since we can't make a decision, we are giving them that information, and when they go back to staff, they will have to decide. They know how we're feeling.
Okay,
If you're happy with that,
I can live with that.
can you live with that? Can
Okay.
you? that the decision
Timeframe on all
we're
this?
suggesting to you, because we cannot take action, that if you decide to change from the historic shingles to asphalt shingles, then we would consider that a major application. If you stay with the shingles as they are, wood, then that's minor repair. It would be a minor application. Since the decision for you to how you want to apply to the city is up to you, then we're suggesting that you choose one of those options and go ahead with what you need to do to finish, get rid of those leaks.
When would we be able to come back here and show you what we want to do and get it approved and get started?
It seems to me that what we're trying to direct you to do is, if it's a minor repair, then staff takes care of it. If it's a major repair, then it comes back to Historic Review Board.
Next
for
month.
an
See us do it.
It'd be 1 month.
Okay, then what you want to do then is, I think, would be to meet with staff, explain to them what you want to do. If it's one way, he handles it. If it's not, he advises you how to get on the agenda for the Historic Resources Board.
And the next meeting is next month.
If you can get the whole application in timely fashion. And then hopefully our whole board is back and you'll have more people to listen to you.
If you choose to come back to the board, bring samples of what you're going to deal with. You'd be coming back to the board if it's not going to be wood shingles. So if you're going to use asphaltic shingles that look like what's there, that's a selling point. Like I said, the whole point of this thing tonight was to just let you get an idea from the city, what are they looking for. So no decisions were made, but this is now, you now know there's 2 courses of action for you. You get to choose. Any other questions from us, the board?
If not, we look forward either to seeing you
Seems very
here, back here, or
Seeing the roof.
hear about it from staff and seeing the roof.
No, seeing the roof.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for helping the whole community understand. With that, our action items, do we approve the affidavit of posting this agenda?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second
Wait a
it.
minute, we got to have a roll call on this?
We already did. Do we have a roll call on a consent item?
I hate to tell you this, but we have roll calls for everything.
No, I just gotta find my sheets.
Okay. Call for the roll call on approval of the action item A.
You have to read all 5 names, even though only 3 are here.
No, you
Right.
know the 2 are not here.
Okay. And this is on approving affidavit.
So we don't need to have a roll call for approving this, or do we?
No, well, he's going to do it.
Are you going to do it? Okay.
So, Commissioner Gillard,
Aye.
Commissioner Garrett,
Aye.
and Commissioner Franco.
That brings us to item number 5, discussion items. I think we've discussed ourselves out as far as I'm
Okay.
concerned. Future agenda items? We'll see. Comments? None, hearing none. I adjourn the Historic Resources Board meeting and hand it to
6:28.
you.
Okay. We're entering phase 2 of this process here. Now we're going to open the meeting of the San Juan Bautista Planning Commission. And we've had the call to order, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the roll call. No, I want a roll call.
All right. Commissioner Franco,
Here.
Commissioner Medeiros,
Excused.
Commissioner Guevara,
Excused.
Commissioner Gillard,
Here?
Commissioner Garrett.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. We can conduct business here. Okay. Before we go, before the Planning Commission, any citizen has a right to a public comment on an item that is not already on the agenda. If it is on the agenda, please hold your comments until that item comes up, and that way the public record will be intact and not be split 2 or 3 places on the minutes. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission? Just an address. This will not be a dialogue, but you do have the right to speak under state law and the Brown Act. Okay, there being no comments, we'll go to informal project review. I do not see any on the agenda. Again, the informal project review is a chance for somebody to come in and say, this is what I've got in mind for San Juan Bautista. It's got, flashing lights and colors. We can say, we're not taking action, but this ain't San Juan Bautista. And that would indicate to that person, maybe I better try a second one. Because remember, things only go through and get approved if the commissions let it go. If it's not in the interest of the city and the commissions voted in, they deserve what they get. But that hurts all the people in the city. So this commission takes it very serious as to what is presented, how it's presented, and what is best for the city, not our own egos here. Okay, we have a consent agenda with the affidavit of posting of agenda, affidavit of posting and mailing the public hearing notices for the amendment to the 1998 general plan to change the urban growth boundary and land use designation. And we have approved the affidavit of posting public hearing notices for the amendment to the 1998 general plan to change the urban growth boundary land use designation. And we have the minutes of July 1st, 2014. Okay, before I call for a motion, I would like to pull the minutes. I feel they need some work on them, and I would like to work with staff on them. So that leaves us with items A, B, and C.
Yes.
Does anybody want to pull something or make a motion on this?
Since that's been pulled, I move the approval of the affidavit of posting A. And
Just the consent agenda.
The consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion for approval of the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Call for the votes.
Commissioner Gillett.
He said Garrett.
Gillett.
Did you say Gillard?
Yeah, I did.
Gillard. Gillard. Aye.
All right. Commissioner Garrett.
Aye.
Commissioner Franco.
Aye. We have a unanimous vote on that. Okay, the next thing we have 3 public hearings. Okay, the first one, consider amendment to the 1998 general plan.
You want to go through the minute corrections?
I think it's hold the next month in case the others do have
Oh, okay.
comments.
You pull it then. Okay.
Okay. Consider the amendment to the 1998 general plan to change the urban growth boundary and land use designation from agriculture to low-density residential. The purpose of the amendment is for planning and feasibility studies for possible future action that the Planning Commission has not approved. Staff.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, the staff report kind of outlines the request by the applicant to amend the general plan. As you recall, the commission took this action back in July 1st, and it was taken on the assumption that this was a planning line, and that the city attorney informed us because the urban growth boundaries occurs on the general plan, that would require us to go through a general plan amendment. And since we're going through the general plan amendment to adjust the urban growth boundaries, then we decided to take and tag along the land use designation at the same public hearing. So tonight you'll be looking at 2 general plan amendment to adjust the urban growth boundaries and change the land use designation for that area that is reflected in the staff report, approximately 28.3 acres.
Okay.
The staff report has outlined the consistencies of many of the policies and programs that are in the existing general plan. We did not bother to look at the potential new proposed general plan at 213 because it isn't adopted at this time. It's only a guideline for consistencies. but the amendment of the urban growth is one step of several that is required in the area to be approved for development. And the general plan changes, rezoning, pre-zoning, environmental studies, planning commission review, public hearings, Environmental Quality Act compliance, and findings, mitigation measures, monitoring programs, and approval conditions are many of the steps that are required before the development can be approved. Public hearing tonight is the first step of the process for the development. At the July 7th meeting, or July 1st meeting, I'd indicated that you had gone through the previous discussion of the moving the urban growth boundaries. Tonight you will take the similar action, take oral testimony, and make a determination whether the general plan amendment can be changed at this time. As a general rule, urbanized development occurs within the city boundary for the purposes of urban services and amenities. Agriculture within the urban settings could result in the conflict of normal farming practices, chemical spraying and airborne particles, and plowing and furrowing and cultivating in the early morning hours. That would be a direct conflict with residential or urbanized development that's in close proximity. As a general rule, most urbanized developments do not have agricultural zonings in them. Agricultural zonings are more in the San Benito County ordinance, where it encourages farming and rangeland development. There are 2 parcels that are within the city of San Juan Bautista that are zoned agricultural, and that is this parcel here, 28, and then directly across from the San Juan Highway that extends all the way out to the north city limits. The vast majority, about 80% of that, is in floodplain, and the only residual part would be the area that's bordering the San Juan Highway, approximately 180 to 200 feet in depth and approximately 680 feet long. And that would be directly across the street from the subject property. Other comments extending the urban growth boundaries are to prevent urban sprawl. Comments as to the existing urban would draw specifically to prevent any development outside the development is inconsistent to the many policies within the current general plan. The ability of the city to adjust the city limits, boundaries, and zoning districts and development regulations is part of the framework to meet the needs of the city in a variety of areas: housing, circulation, infrastructure, open space, designations, parkland development, industrial, commercial development, and areas that the general plan that have goals and objectives and policies for allowing the adjustment to meet those needs of the community. So that's the basic fundamental principle about general plan amendments, that it's the general plan is not cast in stone. It has the ability to be flexible and movable as the needs of the community change.
Thank you. Okay. Public comments. We'll take oral comments first. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this issue?
Hi, my name is Greg Tuttle. I live at 1127 First Street in the Creek Bridge neighborhood. And I just would like everyone to consider carefully this this plan, because this is going to take agricultural land and change the boundary of the city. And that could set a precedent for future projects and change really the whole feel of San Juan Bautista if future city government follows that same path for other parcels of agricultural land. Another concern I have is we're all aware that we have water issues that aren't necessarily addressed in a prompt fashion because government takes time to make decisions. But adding to the fact that we're going to need more water for this project when we already have insufficient quantities of water is a questionable approach under the kind of climate changes that are taking place. So those are the two main points that I wanted to bring to your attention tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other speakers?
Eric,
Yeah. No, sorry. Appreciate your time this evening.
Your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Eric Redisoff, 1108 3rd Street. As I understand, the reasoning for this is to allow for the expansion into the Rancho Vista development. I believe it was brought to the board a couple of months ago. Large housing development, is that correct? And
That is a proposal for the,
that was the
we don't have any proposals now, but everything's in discussion.
correct, understood. I guess I don't know how many homes are supposed to be going into that area. I imagine it's quite a few. There's already a 27-home development looking to go in on 3rd Street, adding another 75 to 100 residents. I don't think that expanding this at this time, unless there's something specific not pertaining to new multi-home development going in, unless there's a specific need at this exact moment for the city, I don't see the need to do this at this time. Perhaps in another 5 or 10 years to bring it up again. I'm not sure that we need that much more housing in this area, which is kind of where this thing is leading to. At least how I understand it, and I may not be fully informed. That's part of the reason why I'm here tonight, is to try to get the information. But if the overall feeling is to make this change so that a very large home development can go on, I would advise that we not go in that direction at this time. There's far too much other infrastructures. It's true we have a water issue. I think it's kind of a temporary thing. It sounds like we're getting that back on track. The information I've been hearing, at least in board meetings and such, sounds like there's enough water, at least for the moment. And I know there's more wells coming in plans for future plans, but there is a wastewater facility that would go between that home development and the current home developments. It would just seem kind of oddly placed unless that's also going to be moved. Also, there's a lot of other things in this town. I'm not sure it's going to be able to support that many people living in that type of, in those additional, that large quantity of homes going in. So I would advise, at least at this moment, from my opinion, is to not change this. I know they want to sell the property and develop, and I can understand that. On the other hand, I think it's going to start taking away quaintness from the town if we keep expanding in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I don't think...
Your name for the record, sir?
Oh, hi, it's Ken Hua. I live at 15 Awani.
Would you spell your last name, please?
Houle.
Okay, thank you.
And I was fortunate enough to go by the City Hall and get a copy of this report. Urban Growth Boundaries Amendment. So I think there's a number of issues in here that I take issue with. I mean, it says it's not going to take away from the aesthetics. I mean, you're taking away one of the most beautiful parts of the city. Looking over at Christopher Ranch as you come into town really sets the view for the town, I think. And you're going to have 100 houses there. It also states in here that it's not in a flood zone. But every year I look out my back window and there's a lake there where they want to build these houses. No, it's there almost all winter. Almost all winter.
Was it there last winter?
Yeah, a small one. Small one, not as big as usual, but it was there.
Please address your comments to the commission.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And so I don't know, I'm totally opposed to this, but it does take away my view. Do we need another house? Do we have so much industry in the area that we need to provide housing for another 100 families?
Do you live in Silver Creek?
Creek Bridge, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I do.
What if the planning commission wouldn't pass that development?
Oh, I know.
You wouldn't have had
And
27
I have
homes
to-
or 30 homes there.
Yeah, I thought about that too, because I enjoy living there, and it's a great place to live.
How many houses is there
35,
as opposed to
100.
Well, no, it's
92.
not going to be 100. How many homes are going to be built there?
92?
That's proposed.
How many? But that's over a period of not all at once.
Oh, okay. That makes it better.
But there's a lot of information that's not provided. Nobody here knows that.
Huh?
That's why we have the public hearings. there.
Sure. So, I mean, there's just a number of issues that really aren't covered here that I don't think are really accurate. You know, and do we have the water and sewage
Yeah, first of all,
capabilities?
let me stop you there.
Okay.
That report relates to a moving of the urban growth boundary.
Okay.
That is not a development. This is not a development permit. There's no houses. All we're doing is taking a line which was designated on the general plan, as staff told you,
Uh-huh.
and the only way you can move it is through a general plan amendment, basically all these public hearings, notifications, et cetera, and on to the city council.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with building a house or anything. All
Okay.
we're saying is, the point
it
is
just-
that,
it does look like it's
right, that's the property we're talking about.
Right.
The whole property, so you can see where the urban growth line is. Okay. Until a project is before us, we won't have an idea of what it's going to be. Right now, they say 97, they could come up with 90. We don't know. There is no project on the table. So we're doing a lot of preliminary work for this.
okay.
So one of the first things is no point in talking about putting a development on a piece of property when you can't do it because, say, it's split between the city and the county. It's got to be in one or the other.
Right.
So there's a lot of basic preliminary work before you have that parcel ready for development. And so the first thing we're doing here is the urban growth boundary. And that is what this report is. Now, there was environmental review done for the things, and a lot of that information is valid here. This moving of this line is not going to have an effect on the environment. A project might.
Got it.
Putting
I
a house,
understand.
putting a river, putting a project
Okay.
might, but not this. So,
Right.
like I said, we're way a ways, but he does have to go, the developer does have to go through and get the land ready to have a proposal put on it. And like I said, we're going to do rezonings, we're going to do general plan amendments, we're going to do urban growth boundary. But I think a little tiny piece of the thing is outside of the city. They're going to have to pull that in. That means dealing with the Local Agency Formation Commission. You're going to get a lot of chances to see a lot of things happen
Okay.
and ask a lot of questions and get answers.
I've lived here for just 16 years, and I remember a while back, didn't we have a 1.5% growth?
I think there was something before I got here.
Did that get repealed?
See, what this does, we just move this line now.
I know.
And
but-
then,
but
when it comes
you're
in front of
opening-
us, we
you're
could make,
opening
we
the
could
door.
tell them you're only going to be allowed to build 12 houses.
Yeah,
You're not going to get your 92 houses.
okay.
And you are in a floodplain, you're going to have to correct all that. You're going to have to deal with the fishing game and all that kind of stuff. Once we get this line, we're in control of the property now. The county could go in right now and build 5-acre parcels.
It's in the city limits, Pat.
Yeah.
That one's in the city limits. We have
Fortunately.
other issues
Yeah.
outside the city limits that concern
So
me.
you can see that this is the beginning. This is the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
But like I said, keep attending the meetings. Have the clerk put your name on the mailing list to get agendas so you'll know what items are coming up.
Okay.
If there's staff reports that are put online, copies of documents, you want to make sure you read those before you come in and you'll be ready.
All right, thank you.
Okay? Have a good one. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this matter?
Hi, I'm Marta Gorelick, and I live at 12 Awani Street. And I just wanted to address something that happened at the last meeting, and I believe it was you, Mr. Franco, I'm not sure. Somebody made a comment about it being really important to have more housing in the city because we want, other people to be able to enjoy the city. Do you remember that comment? We want other people to be able to come in and enjoy the city, and so it's not bad to have new housing. So somebody...
Maybe it's 5 of us here.
But I just wanted to address that thought that there are in fact multiple houses on sale in the city. There are places for rent in the city, and so if it's an issue of not having enough housing, there actually is, there are several possibilities for people looking for that. So we're not looking at a housing crunch within the city, and I think people should keep that in mind. And I don't think you can actually, I know we're not looking at a project right now, but this never would have come up if a project wasn't put on the table. So we all know that's on the table, and we all know that when you have something in an urban boundary, it gets developed because the whole plan is to develop within your urban boundaries. So we do have to think about those things. And the other thing is you were saying about it's good to not have urban boundaries next to agricultural land. Well, I think in our instance, we always will be doing that. We live in an agricultural county, so our urban boundary by definition will be next to agricultural land. If it's not the Christopher Ranch, next will be the Nyland Ranch, or next will be the next ranch down. That's just by definition the way we're going to live here. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Thank you, members of the Planning Commission. Cara Vonk, 609 3rd Street. I'd like to just mention that this is more than just moving a line. You're actually also zoning it for housing. So, it is being zoned for housing, which allows a developer to come forward and put up housing. I have appeared before you many times before in opposition to repealing the urban growth boundary, and I did submit written comments previously, and I'd like to make those part of the record for tonight because I don't really want to beat a dead horse here. The current general plan calls for a city surrounded by agriculture. That's why we have that buffer outside the growth boundary. It's zoned agriculture, and that's what we're all about. Compact city surrounded by agriculture, nature, etc. Repeal of this urban growth boundary and rezoning it for housing is just going to create suburban sprawl. And I agree with the gentleman. We have a beautiful view coming in now. And then what are the environmental impacts? I thought you needed environmental impact report when you did a general plan, and you're doing a major general plan amendment here. What about these people who are going to live in this area? I think the state requires communities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. You're going to have 97 households, or however many it might be, but it is zoned, apparently, if you approve this, for that number of housing. We'd have to know what the build-out potential is. And these people are all going to be commuters. And not only that, we have prided ourselves on being a walkable city. That's going to be too far to walk to the windmill or to other businesses. People are going to be driving to get around town. So that also brings up the traffic impacts. What are the traffic impacts? Let me see. Yeah, schools, all of the usual environmental impacts should be studied before you take this major step.
Well, there's no question about what you're saying is correct, but we don't have a project. We are moving a line. The general plan amendment is moving the urban growth line over,
okay.
Because this wouldn't have been a public hearing item, except that it was put on the general plan.
Right. You need a general plan amendment.
That's what we're doing.
Right.
But we're not doing it for a project.
But you're rezoning for R1, low density residential, which gives you the potential of, I don't know, somebody mentioned 97 houses. That's going to be a major environmental impact. It seems to me you would have to review the impacts of rezoning this property. So after the developer takes his millions It will be up to us to take care of this new community of residents. And how can we do that when we can't even take care of our current community? You know, we've got water issues, and now the legislature has just passed a bill. It doesn't matter how many gallons you can pump out of the aquifer, you've got to know how much you have left. You know, we have no idea how much water we have left. Can we take care of these people? And then all the other issues I've mentioned before. So as you know, I'm totally opposed to this. We should be focused on the McCullamy Street corridor and getting some economic development in there, not building huge housing developments, which we don't need, because we do have that other one coming in with 20-some houses, and new houses are popping up all over town. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? That's it? Okay. Back to Planning Commission. Commissioners,
We have some written.
I think that one's for the next one. Do you want to put it now, or do you want to? I was going to put it for the next item.
This is from Vanda.
Yeah.
I believe it's for this one.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you want to read it?
Uh,
Want me to read it?
I prefer you to read it.
Okay, we have one written
And
comment.
this is the end of her sentence right here.
We have one written comment. This was sent in electronically.
Commissioner, did you want to hear from me, the applicant, on this call?
I think at this point, why don't we have all the public comments, and then we'll get developer, staff, and commission. Good point. Yeah, okay. This is, again, is a email from Vanda Guibert, Tuesday, September 2nd, to the Deputy City Clerk. Copies to the City Manager, City Planner, myself, Georgiana Gularte. Dear fellow Planning Commissioners, I regret that I cannot be there personally to share my thoughts, but as you know, our third grandchild just arrived, and I'm out of town helping my daughter and her family. I have not been able to view the staff report or any of the materials in our binders as I left it before it was ready. Perhaps we should continue this discussion to the next meeting. As Planning Commissioners, we are tasked with the challenge of making decisions that we deem to be the best in the interests of the city of San Juan Bautista. And I try to uphold that challenge regardless of how issues might affect me personally. However, two big concerns are looming to the forefront, and for me they are taking precedence over all else. One, the drought. Two, the universal image of San Juan Bautista as being an historic city frozen in time. When I first moved to Northern California from the Los Angeles area in 1976 as a young and idealistic 23-year-old, I was visiting Ghirardelli Square in San Francisco one day and was approached by the Chronicle's Question Man, a popular column which ran for decades in that city's newspaper. The question posed to me was, quote, should we limit the population of California, end quote. My response was yes, California is much too crowded, there is a limit to everything, and California is running out of space. California is so overcrowded that they're destroying the little land we have left. We're running out of resources, we're already running out of water. They are going to have to limit population by not passing water bonds and by limiting housing. That was almost 40 years ago, and we are still having the same discussion. 20 years ago, when my husband was considering a job offer from Monterey County, we decided to spend the weekend in San Juan Bautista, which we had never visited. As we drove over the old San Juan Grade Road from Salinas around dusk, we were both stunned when we reached the crest of the road and viewed the pristine and beautiful San Juan Valley below, lit only by natural light. We each commented on how amazing the view was and that it must be the very same view that people had seen for hundreds of years, frozen in time. I drive that road whenever I have to go to Salinas, but sadly, now the view has changed in the last 11 years that we have lived in San Juan. Now when we reach the summit, we see the Rancho Larios development and water tanks that have destroyed that awesome view. When we lived in Sacramento, we used to sail at Folsom Lake, which is at 39% capacity. When I recently visited Lake Mead, it was shocking to see how low the lake level is. 14 years of drought have left Lake Mead at its lowest since the Hoover Dam was built in the 30s. Finally, several weekends ago, Don Christopher celebrated his 80th birthday at the Christopher Ranch, which is a frequent wedding reception venue. On this festive occasion, the big white event tent and live music just affirmed for me how well suited that site is for such events. For all these reasons, I cannot support the Rancho Vista project. At this time, I cannot approve the proposal to rezone from agriculture to low-density housing. Sincerely, Van de Guibert. This comment comes in not as a commissioner, but as a public written comment, because she is not here on the dais. Thank you.
I feel as if we need to remind everyone here that those people who are absent as commissioners tonight, before they can involve themselves in any future discussion about this particular issue, they will have to affirm that they have viewed the whole project on the CMAP, what was being taped live today, and is available as the official minutes of this meeting. So your comments will be heard by them, and our discussion will be heard by them before they can do any further action on this issue.
Okay.
As I understand it.
Good evening. I'm Bob Fulton. I'm representing the 28 acres that we're talking about. And thank you, commissioners and staff, for your time and input we've had in the past. And we are here requesting the general plan update and rezoning for this parcel. As you know, I brought it forward at an informal project review many months ago and have been a fixture in your faces for well over a year now, listening to you and everyone as well as I can as to what goes on in San Juan Bautista and what should be going on in San Juan Bautista. And I'm hoping that as we go forward on this project and all of the input that will be directed through Planning Commission through the many stages that we go through, that we will take all of that direction and create a neighborhood eventually, we hope, that will be what San Juan Bautista is and should be, and something that everyone is extremely proud of when they come into San Juan Bautista, as it will be one of the first things you see entering town. So thank you for consideration of this as you're going forward, and I'll look forward to your comments.
Thank you. Okay, now. Everybody saw that report, available public. Okay, public hearings. Okay. The environmental document that basically is included in that staff report. If you notice, all those items that would normally be asked in a document are being answered there for the movement of the line. Okay. So we need to make some findings. And a list of them here, we can talk about them as we go through. The amendment of the 1998 general plan for the extension of the urban growth boundary is contiguous to the existing urban area of the city.
Could you help me find the page before
Number 5A.
5A, I have 5A.
And it's the very beginning.
The very beginning.
Third sheet.
Third sheet.
Starts with C at the top. See something?
It would be
There
sheet.
it is. Receive and hear test.
And look under E.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, fine, thank you.
So we need to discuss and make the following findings. The amendment of the 1998 general plan for the extension of the urban growth boundary is contiguous to the existing urban area of the city and will result in an orderly and outward growth for the future urban development. B, the amendment of the 1998 general plan for changing the land use designation from agriculture to low-density residential will have a less than significant impact on the surrounding area. C, the amendment of the 1998 general plan will not adversely impact agricultural lands or increase the potential for vandalism, trespass, or the creation of public or private nuisance on public lands. The amendment of the 1998 general plan will not result in degradation of the water quality. That was D. E. The amendment of the 1998 general plan will not result in reduced public access, provided that access does not infringe upon private property rights. F. The amendment of the 1998 general plan will allow the city to plan for urban growth development that is consistent and compatible to the surrounding areas and within the city's public service capabilities. G. The amendment of the 1998 general plan will not result in any increased requirements or restriction upon agricultural practices or of prime ag lands. H. The amendment of the 1998 general plan will allow uses that will be properly related to other uses, transportation facilities, and other public facilities in the area, and will not cause undue environmental impact relating to noise, odor, and pollution. The amendment of the 1998 general plan for the extension of the urban growth boundary and changes the land uses of the area will be consistent with the goals, objectives, policies, and programs of the proposed draft 2035 general plan for future urban growth. J. The amendment of the 1998 general plan to extend the urban growth boundary encompasses an area that is not designated prime farmland. K. The amendment of the 1998 general plan encompasses a 28.3 acre parcel that is within the city limits and is currently being provided services. So, to make, with those findings, we would adopt Resolution 2014A with the above findings. A resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Juan Bautista approving the staff report for amending the urban growth boundary of the 1998 general plan with supporting policies for amending the urban growth boundary and land use designation of the 1998 general plan. So that's the first resolution, is to approve the staff report, the content. Second one, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Juan Bautista amending the urban growth boundary and land use designation of the 1998 general plan for the development of the property north of Creek Bridge subdivision and west of San Juan Highway, and recommending to the City Council. So, the findings are in, so those findings are in both resolutions.
They apply to both of them.
Oh, they're in both of them. The whereases. We have to make those findings, otherwise the things
Yes,
are valid.
and the resolution is the one, we don't have page numbers.
No. This is the first resolution after the picture. Yeah, that's the one that approves the staff report. Because that's going to go to City Council. So we've gone through that. Do you have comments on this?
No comments back?
Do you have any?
I'm wondering if there are agencies that have been requested responses from and that we don't have them, or do we have them? What agencies have been contacted and how are their responses handled?
We haven't got any responses from agencies. We sent copies out to the county. They're our primary response to the schools, everybody that's directly around us. Generally, we do not send it to the state clearinghouse, and it's circulated because it's a local project inside the general plan amendment provision, and it doesn't involve what they call regional transportation issues or regional issues.
So we didn't expect to get comment back from them because it's not a state.
This particular project there will border the northern city limits line that exists there. The city did authorize the annexation of a small triangular piece, just part of this development, to be annexed, and it has to go through the process of the environmental review and LAFCO's approval to adjust it to the boundaries of the property. That's the only deviation that will happen on the northern existing property line.
So it's that triangle in the map?
That's a triangle in the map, yeah. This particular process is a vacant land that's zoned agriculture. We have another piece of property, the Johnson property, approximately 7 acres, that's inside the city limits, that's currently zoned low-density residential development. Those are about the only two that are there. The section that I had indicated on the staff report is directly across the street of the San Juan Highway, or North Street extension, is 2 parcels approximately 200 feet wide by 650 feet long that are outside the floodplain area that potentially are zoned agriculture and could be zoned some type of residential use, multiple versus low-density residential. Right now, the existing parcels from the Villa Padre subdivision, which is the old grammar school, to north about 3 or 4 houses are zoned residential, and they're right across from the Creek Bridge subdivision that's on First Street. And they're zoned currently R1. But north of that, it's agricultural zoned.
That large piece with the wire fence and the...
Yes. Yes.
The crepe myrtles?
Crepe myrtles, yeah, right, yeah.
Okay. I guess the other thing I didn't mention was that under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, this action is exempt, but you got to show your findings. And those are the findings we have to support our position that this is one of those kind. Okay, so I'll entertain, if there's no other discussion, I'll entertain a motion on the first one. Let's just call that 2014A to distinguish it from the second one, that's 2014B. And then the clerk can put in whatever number she...
I think we had the numbers identified as 16 and 17. Yeah.
16 and 17, very good. Okay, let's take 16. I call for a motion. Project dies for lack of a motion? After all this discussion?
The whole entire project dies for lack of...
Well, no, we can't, this resolution is ready to go. And if I don't get a motion in a second, we can't vote on it. So it dies for tonight, we wouldn't bring it up until next month.
We wouldn't bring it up until next
Couldn't.
month?
I mean, if you don't take action on it, it's an automatic continuance, unless you want to call it an automatic.
It's an automatic continuance, or our action can be to continue it.
That's an option.
And our action might be to continue it.
But I'm calling for a motion, so.
So, before we go on, I'm thinking of where Commissioner Medeiros lives. Is he within 300 feet of this, and he would be recusing himself of any vote on this? And would Commissioner Guibert also live within 300 feet of this, and she would be recusing herself of this?
Yes. So it would fall back onto you three.
So it would fall back on the three of us. And I believe there was a question about doing a project concerning the general plan. Does it have to have a majority of how many and so forth?
No, that's a council thing having to do with financing.
It doesn't have to do with recommending bodies such as ours?
No, it's just a majority of the commission. We are the commission. With two recusals, we are the planning commission.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am. Would you come to the podium?
I am Rosa.
And your name, please, for the record.
Rosa Loaiza. And I think the parcel that you're talking about with the crepe metals is our parcel. And I just have very little information in all this. So it's not a question, but if you're gonna carry it on for next month, I think it would be very beneficial for us. I don't know for the other people, but because we just don't know anything about everything that is going on and how it impacts us and everything, because I think the parcel that you're talking about is ours.
Okay.
This is
It's
957.
No, it's important to let you know that this is a public hearing by state law. It was published in the newspapers. It was posted, and the adjacent property owners within 300 feet were notified by postcard. So that let everybody know it was coming up.
Oh yeah, that's why
the
we're
library,
here.
The library has a hard copy of the reports of everything that's here. There's a copy at the counter in City Hall. So it isn't like nobody told anybody.
I didn't say that. We did get this last notice. If a vote doesn't come to it and a continuancy is, moved on, then I would be able to get knowledge of all of this. We did get a notice for this. I just didn't totally realize, and we're from Morgan Hill. Needless to say, everybody is busy, but we just didn't got to the point that it was to this extent until we're sitting here. So maybe that's not convenience, but it is something that I'm just sitting here and thinking, I think that's my parcel.
Well, you're within 300 feet of the project
Yes.
because you got the notice.
Yes.
So you're close.
Yes. So.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. So I would like to know if all those papers are also online so that I can get to download them sometime this week and become aware of all the things that I would like to be aware of with this particular project.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
May we respond to the idea that people are not aware again?
No, she got her notice.
She got her notice.
This last
But-
notice, that one
yes.
for today.
But the whole general attitude seems to be that people are not aware wherever I go in town, at other meetings. We don't have a newspaper anymore, and it's such a great loss. We relied on it so much. Is there any possibility that the city can provide online the kind of material that we have in our packet? I know it's done in other cities, and I'm wondering if that isn't available to us to send to anyone who gets on our email list requesting a packet. Isn't it possible for an electronic, simple message to go out to all of our people who want it?
If they request to get down and give us their email status, then it can be distributed, yeah.
But something like this packet would be way too big to send just in an email.
Excuse me?
This would be way too big to send in an email. Which is way
Oh,
too big.
in other words, they would get it as junk mail because it's so much
Right,
material?
we'd have to notice them that it would be on it, but they still have to go elsewhere to get the information. When we do that, yeah.
The whole packet can't be posted?
It can be posted, but it wouldn't be sent in an email.
There's
They
only-
would get notified in an email about the fact that
You could send out notices. and have
Posted
it on
somewhere
City
else
Hall.
on,
What happens is the email says, there's too much for us.
I see.
May I make a comment on that? I think you can post large emails on the web. I think you can totally post it on the web, and you can send multiple emails to all the people that are in your list that would like to get emails.
The problem is the size of it. A
Well,
lot
I
of,
understand
But
yeah.
I think what we do is
posting is a
yeah.
different thing than sending an email.
yeah, we email the agenda. We provide the applicants with a copy of their staff report. We do not send the full packet to everybody. We post the packet on the website, and they can review it.
So was this posted on a website?
Yes.
the agenda,
but not,
the whole-
so
Not the whole package.
that's what, that process is what I'm asking to have happen in the future so that people can inform themselves. We are informed with this package 4 or 5 days in advance. Believe me, I've been reading it ever since. And I know that people in San Juan are interested in what's going on.
Again, that'd be one for the council staff to work out, because I think there's some labor involved
We
in it.
have somebody suggesting that he might want to say something on this issue. I don't know if we can
Please
take
speak,
it up.
sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to say, if you...
Would you come to the,
Dan DeVries, 405 5th Street, and we are going to have a newspaper again soon. In the meantime, if you would just upload the documents to a provider like Hightail or Dropbox, and then just provide the link to that, you don't have to worry about size of files and everything. Everyone can just log on and get whatever they want from that link. It's real easy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's very reasonable, and there is no paper money or paper involved or postage or anything.
Okay,
Excuse
thank
me
you.
for interrupting our train of thought, because we need to get back to serious business,
ahead.
and I'm having a problem getting back to this
okay,
serious business.
the chair has called for a motion for action on this item, Resolution 2014-16.
So there's no use to make a motion to table or continue, because we're going to be in. Right?
We are-
Even whether we have 5 people here, we're the deciding factor.
Dave, he's over 300 feet.
Is he over?
Yeah. He lives way up at this end of it.
I think we ran the thing on him, and he would have to recuse himself.
He would have to recuse himself.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Does that mean on every other issue regarding this piece of property throughout this possible 5-10 years?
Yeah, they kept.
And Vanda as well?
That's the problem with small cities.
So, here we
Where I
are.
lived, Donna lived 2 houses from me, and, you know, anything would have happened in our neighborhood, we've taken out 2 commissioners.
So we 3 are the responsibility for
The future of it.
Christopher Ranch property.
Chair calls for a motion.
By moving forward, you will then get the next phase of the development, which then the applicant can exercise his development right to start submitting the necessary plan so that you could see what the impacts are going to be. Without that, we will know. So right now, it's just nothing more than a planning study of running the feasibility and including this land inside the existing city limits line. The boundaries are not going to change.
When we went through this whole issue last July, I voted.
We all agreed to that.
Yes, I voted aye. And for several reasons. One is that it is actually within the city limits. Another argument I presented at that time was that since the old 1998 general plan, which is what we're trying to amend, the whole surroundings of San Juan Bautista have changed. We used to think that north of town was just purely agriculture, and there was only one packing shed out there, very small operation. All the rest was green fields. There was a beautiful little farmhouse that has been torn down. All of that area, except the Christopher Ranch, was in county, under their jurisdiction, and your property, under the jurisdiction of the county. You're in the city, right? Your two across the street from each other are within the city. And then I took a serious look at south of San Juan, where we have actually not many changes have gone on in the county out there so far. And actually, I took a drive up there today, coming down San Juan grade, just exactly as Vanda describes in her letter, and took a look at that whole San Juan feeling coming in over the historic road. We have Fremont Peak, we have Deanza Trail, we have the St. Francis Retreat. We have talk about another retreat coming to that area. We have actual growing plants, prime ag out there, which in the county is zoned as small, buildable lots. So I became concerned that we are ignoring our really beautiful historic entrance to San Juan, and also ignoring the change north of town, where we have a huge industrial agricultural production plant, where they're making plastic, the containers you get your vegetables in from that plant are made there. They're making plastic containers there. We see the water coming out on property that looks like it will never grow plants. It isn't supposed to. It's wastewater from that plant. We have another plant down the road on Prescott Lane. And then we see all of these tents growing over the plants out there. Our whole north of San Juan has changed so drastically in the last 20 years that for it to be considered the gateway to San Juan is, I'm finding it very hard to rationalize that will remain the gate to San Juan. The highway brings people in on this end of town. We have an opportunity to use the area south of town perhaps differently than we had envisioned, to be more the park-like. There's where the creeks come through. There's where proposed trails will connect. I know it's on the other side of the highway. The highway is the big disaster. We knew that highway was coming way back in 1958. They never disguised their plans. It was going to be a freeway someday. All of these things I have just been so concerned about. And yet, here we are having to make this decision. And I thought I made the right decision in July to say that we should extend the urban growth boundary to include property already in the city limits of San Juan Bautista. Very few parts of it, 5-10 acres perhaps, out in the county for future annexation. And it was not ever used for growing crops. It was just hay. So with that, I move the acceptance of this resolution.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. The motion is a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Juan Bautista approving the urban growth boundary staff report with supporting policies for the amendment of the urban growth boundary and land use designation of the 1998 general plan and recommends to the City Council. We'll take a roll call on this one.
All right. Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Commissioner Garrett.
Aye.
Commissioner Franco.
Aye.
Quorum being present. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Now, 2417. A resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Juan Bautista amending the urban growth boundary and land use designation of the 1998 general plan for development of property north of Creek Bridge subdivision and west of San Juan Highway, recommending to the City Council. Okay, we've gone through that one. Call for a motion.
It's your turn, Pat.
No, I'm not talking.
You're not going to make it.
No. You talk good.
You seconded the other one. Can you make this one?
No.
You won't make it.
you know, this time.
In the interest of
Remember,
progress.
you are 1/3 of the planning commission.
I know.
I move the adoption of Resolution 2014, number 17.
Okay. And repeat, the resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Juan Bautista amending the urban growth boundary and land use designation of the 1998 General Plan for development of the property north of Creek Bridge subdivision and west of San Juan Highway and recommending to the City Council. Okay, staff, roll call.
Did we get a second?
Oh, is there a second on this motion?
I'll second that.
Seconded.
Commissioner Galar.
Aye.
Commissioner Garrett.
Aye.
Commissioner Franco.
Aye.
Four being present, motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Next. Let's see, that was 580.
That was hard.
Did we adopt the right ones? 16, 17. Now we have another one. This is item 5B on your agenda. To wit, consider amendment to the 1998 General Plan to change the urban growth boundary and land use designation for a request by Elaine Reyna to pre-zone and annex a .37 acre parcel of land identified as census parcel number 012-160-031, lying adjacent to and southerly of the city's boundary line. Okay, staff?
Is that the map right there?
Yeah, in fact, let me read this one first.
That is the map that I just showed you, yeah.
Let me read
And,
the request first.
Yes, I'll bring that up there. Elaine Reyna, her property is divided between the county and the city, and the line goes right through the house. Approximately 71% of the house is in the city, and 28% is in the county. She would like to request that the annexation. However, she has submitted us a letter here, and it's dated today, September the 2nd, to Honorable Mayor Moore, City Manager Roger Grimsley, City Council members, citizens, and to whomever concerned. I'm Elaine Reyna at 419 Salinas Road, San Juan Bautista. I ask that Dan DeFries to read to you the following in my absence, and I'll turn it over to Dan.
And she added my name. Do you have a copy with my name on there?
Yes.
Okay.
Dan here?
Mr. DeBree, are you going to carry that one?
I could read it, or you...
Sure, Georgianne. I just wanted to say that I saw Georgianne walking in, and she told me about that letter, and I was, maybe there's a miscommunication. I didn't know I was supposed to read anything, so Georgianne, if you could read it. I think
Okay,
that would
because Elena handed this to me as we were coming in, and that's why you saw me running around not knowing quite how to get her phone number. And she didn't respond. She says, I spent all of today with my very ill son and half of a day with him in hospital with a serious physical condition which requires me to be standby with him this evening. I am his caregiver for 12 years now. He lives in the casita on my property since 2001. I am requesting a postponement of the annexation of my property until I have more focused time to peruse information which is presented today. I appreciate the attention given to my property by Mr. Grimsley, but I am sure under the circumstances that he will understand. Sincerely, Lainey Reyna. Written and approved by Lainey Reyna. Would it be appropriate to entertain tabling this item to a future time?
Probably the best motion would be is to continue it to a date certain, and then we can, and depending on her health, we can continue it.
The tabling definitely, it's just, you just stop it.
Stop
Just
it right
sits there
there.
forever. But to a date certain,
Right.
we can continue it. Give her a month. Did she indicate to you how much time she'd want?
No, she didn't. She was very upset because she had to get home.
Okay, I suggest then that I'd recommend, we won't discuss this, but continue it to the next regular meeting. By that time, we'll be able to get more information whether that's enough or if she wants more time. But this will officially put it on the next agenda.
And
I'll take a motion on that one.
I feel obligated on her behalf to move that we continue this item until the next meeting.
There's a second on the motion?
The next regular meeting of the...
Oh, the
planning
next regular meeting is in October.
Next,
We're not
Right.
concerned with
the next
another
meeting.
date.
Yeah, we'll make next meeting. Okay,
Just a
there's a second? Okay, is there any discussion from the public or from anybody? No comments, then I call for a vote. Zach?
Commissioner Millard,
Aye.
Commissioner Garrett,
Aye.
Commissioner Franco.
Aye. Okay, that was a fast one. Okay, the next item on the agenda. Consider amendments to this is item 5C. Consider amendments to Section 7, signs of the San Juan Bautista Design Guidelines, making the guidelines more user-friendly. This is a continued public hearing, originally posted for June 10th, 2014, at a special meeting. So, the history of this thing, we had, when we did the ordinance with the new sign code, it affected the design guidelines for signs. In other words, if we said the sign has to be so big and the guidelines said it could be something different big, that's a conflict, and we'd be sitting here with all kinds of discussion, but it says this and but it says that. So we held up the process. Okay, we've got us an ordinance. We now go to the design guidelines, bring those guidelines consistent with the ordinance. And we went through a couple of times. This was done by the students of Cal Poly, and they put some stuff together, but they're not professional, they're students, and so we missed a few items. Went back, made the corrections, and I understand Commissioner Guibert sat in City Hall and made all the changes that were requested at the last meeting, and now we're ready for action. Is there anybody who would like to speak on this item? Staff, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think the guidelines that the Cal Poly students put together and the amendments and the adjustments that Van de Goubert made, I think reflects what we had talked about in our sign dialogue and changing the sign ordinance. And this will pave the way for us to now bring the sign ordinance to the City Council with the design guidelines as a package deal so we can get it adopted.
Okay. No comments or no comments? Okay, I call for a motion.
I make a motion that we accept this.
I can't second that.
Why not?
Well, let me read this thing here.
Okay,
A resolution. Okay, we're looking for is a resolution. Did I miss something here?
No.
Where is the resolution?
Wait, no, hold it.
Mhm.
Did we miss something here, Roger? That's the way we know. Okay, no, we didn't. Okay. It would be...
Where's the resolution?
Yeah,
we find it.
it didn't get into there and everything. It's Resolution 2014-18.
I still can't second that motion, and this is the reason.
You don't like signs?
After all of these years of going through this, and a question I have to ask, and I don't believe we've introduced to the group before they all left that this is our planner is Matt, this new Matt. He's not really the deputy city clerk, although he might be acting that way today. Did Vanda go over this and include all of the pictures that we see in this document as okay?
That's a good question, and is that when we went through it, and after she finished, it looked good. But I think that only the commissioners could look at it and say, yes, it reflects what you desired. So maybe it would be worth it for us to continue this, and it's been this long, and let's bring it back and have everybody review it, and then make an approval.
I'm going to go back to what I've been arguing against all along. page 46, has two forbidden pictures of, in the new ordinance, as proposed, we will not allow a A-frame sign sitting on the street of San Juan Bautista, and both pictures on this page are pictures of signs sitting on the street of San Juan Bautista. An A-frame is going to be allowed within a patio, within a different, it's not going to be allowed to sit on the street in San Juan Bautista under the new ordinance. Although I see them every day on the streets of San Juan Bautista, when the ordinance passes, they will be grandfathered in, amortized over time, and so forth and so on. But it's a process. It will be a process. You may see them. However, I just can't accept this document with those two pictures in it. So there is why I won't second it, Pat.
That's on page 46.
46.
Yeah.
That's, you're right, that's a forbidden sign.
Are the two statements above it then false as well? The two that say an A-frame sign made out of wood, hanging, carved, or painted is encouraged, and A-frame signs should only be displayed during business hours and only one per store foot is allowed. Both of those are either what's allowed and encouraged. So if what you're saying is true, that's
I think what she's
I'm
getting at is
saying
the fact
it's just
that...
the picture. It's the picture
No,
that
wait.
shows.
that corresponds.
No,
to
what
the
she's
statement.
getting at is they're prohibited signs
They're
on
prohibited.
public land. They're only
what
allowed
none.
on private property, and the pictures are clearly in the public right-of-way.
Okay.
I think that's the issue. Is that the issue?
This or she
That's
doesn't
my
want
issue.
no
So if these things...
freestanding frames.
If these had been on private property, Georgiana, if this had been on private property, it wouldn't be a matter.
I would not be able to say a word.
Okay, all right. So
Okay.
we can change that. Yeah.
So I'll take a motion to continue. Make the change. That gives them...
I got one
I could
question.
second it if he changes his motion, maybe.
If I, like my mall down there,
Your mall,
I could have a freestanding sign in the
Yes.
middle of it.
yes.
Right.
Yes,
As long as it's not on a sidewalk. See,
That's right.
we're saying,
exactly.
we're regulating signs on public land.
Right.
As soon as we step over the line and you draw a big red line there, as soon as you're on the other side, that's private property.
That's right.
And if you want to have, you or any of your, well, we didn't, your tenants
Right.
would want an A-frame, they could put one there, but not on a sidewalk.
That's right.
And
But
some are there.
unfortunately, the picture wasn't one of yours. In fact, I think one of these signs should be put on your property and the picture taken so we get an idea. But when you see it on public land here, it's kind of conflicting with what the text is.
What they're talking about.
Yeah.
We've been at
Okay.
it for 4 years, Pat, so.
I know what you've been doing.
And all this time, they've grown.
That's oversight. Okay, I'll take a motion for continuance, and that way we'll find two pictures, put it in there, and take final action next meeting. How's that sound?
Can you just declare continuance, or do we have to have a motion?
Let's take a motion. He's new, he needs to practice. Okay, the motion to continue the sign guidelines to make the pictures match the text. A-frames on private property. Call for a motion.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. I used to like the days, just all in favor, all opposed.
Commissioner Delar.
Aye.
Commissioner Garrett.
What else you got on there?
Commissioner Garrett.
Aye or nay? Are you going to vote for the motion?
I did.
Oh, he said aye.
He said aye.
He said aye.
All right, Commissioner Franco.
Aye.
All right.
Hey, this meeting is getting shorter all the time. Okay. Now, we have another issue. The next regular meeting is the same date as the general election day in November. Oh, the November meeting conflicts with election day. Traditionally, we have not had meetings to allow everybody to get out there and vote. So, the issue is, when would you want to have the meeting?
There is a slight little problem. Normally, as a rule of thumb, we would say following Tuesday, which would be November the 11th. And November 11th is a holiday.
So,
Veterans Day.
after this election. A lot of us could be removed from the board.
Exactly.
No, they're not
That's the next-
seated.
You won't be until you're replaced by the new city council members.
Okay.
And they will not be seated until December 16th.
Okay.
So we might have one more meeting
Yes.
before with a shuffle.
So my recommendation would be is either have a meeting that
Till after that.
go to November the 4th or the 5th. I mean, excuse me, 5th or the 6th, or Wednesday or Thursday.
Wednesday? Tuesday, Wednesday? Yeah, we're pushing about one night.
One night. Normally Tuesday night would be the 4th, and so the 5th would be a Wednesday night, or the 6th would be a Thursday.
Because you know what happens if you put on the 11th?
No.
They'll burn City Hall.
No, we wouldn't want to do that.
Veterans Day.
We want to honor veterans.
So, 4th and 5th.
Did you have any response from Vanda or David regarding their availability?
I think the 5th.
I think she said the 5th, but I'm mistaken, I can't recall. But
She was out of here for the 5th or in?
Oh, she commented the 5th worked for her. I think it worked for
her.
David, too.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to the 5th.
I'd make a motion, we take the 5th.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second it.
Wednesday night, and then we will duly notify the press and...
Okay, so the 5th. Okay, so the motion is to change the date of the regular meeting in November from the 3rd, 4th, to a special meeting on the 5th. It is a special meeting because it is not on the regular posted day. Okay, call for a motion, a call for election, a vote. God, it's kind of late.
You get the second.
I said
Vote.
it.
Yes, I'll order right now. Commissioner Deluxe.
Aye.
Commissioner Gray.
Aye.
Commissioner Franco.
Aye.
Passing unanimous.
Okay, so that puts it down at the 5th. Okay, discussion items. Parking in the city update, staff.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman of the Commission, this is a continuation of what came out of this agency, this body here, that you emphasized that parking was very critical, and Commissioner Franco, the chairman, wrote a letter. We transmitted that to the city council. They took that and then they recognized the importance of it, and they called a meeting of the stakeholders. And at that meeting, we held it August the 22nd, last month, and those in attendance were Tony Bach, and the other council member that's a part of that is Rick Edge, but it was held during the day, and then Rick couldn't attend. Ruben Zapata, the superintendent of the Roma School, and Bill Rupert, his maintenance superintendent, my father Jerry Mayo, Sean James of the acting superintendent of San Juan State Park, Chris Maturano of the Strategic Planning Committee, and myself. And we met here at the City Hall. It was a very productive meeting. We discussed a lot of the issues of bus parking as well as visitors and vehicle parking. And throughout we identified the areas, the school lot next to the soccer field, the mission lot at the southeast corner of 2nd and San Jose Avenue, state park maintenance yard at Franklin Street. We're increasing angular parking throughout city streets. We provide lots on 4th Street, east of between Mariposa and Washington Street, and there are other issues that came up. And so it was very productive. I think that everybody recognized that by getting everybody together as a stakeholder, that we can achieve some direction and coordinate bus parking as well as vehicle tourist parking to the state parking. Our next meeting hasn't been set, and we'll be contacting them, and then we'll have another meeting. And Matt Leal, who's in Portugal, he transmitted us some ideas of what he's been working on, and we've got a packet there that we'll be distributing that to the members there. At our next meeting there, maybe we can come up with some concrete directions that we can get going on.
Okay. I'd like to make one comment on attendance number 4. Father Jerry is Maher, M-A-H-E-R.
ER?
ER, right? Okay. Any comments on that from anybody? Okay. Next one, wayfinding update.
Again, this is an ongoing project where the city has participated in the wayfinding group that's studying signage throughout San Benito County, and Hollister, San Benito County, as well as the city of San Juan. These are some ideas that Matt has transmitted us of the discussions that they had with it, and the staff report kind of indicates to them there are a few other ideas that have been floating around, and the wayfinding committee will be presenting those to us as alternates so we can make a decision and bring it back. And Matt, do you have any additions to that?
I think the only other thing that we discussed with Brenda was whether someone would be interested in doing our own branding for the city. Because the city of Hollister, for instance, is going to have their own branding. It's going to make their signs, unique to their spot. This is more at the county level, but you want to have a certain aspect of the sign be yours. And the ones in here are just sort of generic examples, but that's something that we might want to look into.
We might be looking into it as to get a branding, a logo that can identify that would be our logo that when you come into the city on all of our identification signs, as well as, and we're also looking at when we do get into the roundabouts where we have the centerpiece, there can be a monument sign with our logo there. That would accentuate San Juan as a city of history.
I got one question. Them 15-mile-an-hour signs, how come they didn't put them on the light pole? Just make a clamp, put them on there. We got so many signs going through the street now, it's terrible. Have you seen them? They got them all the way up down both sides of Main Street, 15 mile an hour with a pole, steel pole sticking up.
Our town?
You haven't seen those?
I don't go on Main Street very often, Pat.
That must have been asleep.
What we found was that there was only one 15-mile-an-hour sign. That was at the corner of Pierce Drive, Pierce Street and the Alameda. And then all the rest, there was nothing to indicate 15 miles. We wanted to slow the traffic down. At times, some of the cars get going quite fast down there, and we want to encourage it to go slow. But Commissioner Garrett has a good point there, is maybe we should look at hanging them off of the street lights, and that way there eliminate some of the poles.
Because they're told now you have about 8, 4 on each side.
Yeah, about 4 on each side.
Because right there in front of our mall, they just stuck going right. They could have moved it back between mine and Al's place, or put it on a light pole. It looked a lot better.
That's too bad.
And we even been thinking about right now the condition of 3rd Street between McCollum and Tuolumne is very poor and everything in there, but eventually when that surface gets repaired there, we want to extend that 15-mile-an-hour all the way down there.
Good.
To the left side.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, this placing the 15-mile-an-hour signs you're talking about, and I'll get back to the point, Matthew, in a minute about the wayfaring. Years ago, Cara and I walked and talked, and when improvements were placed in San Juan Bautista, and tried very, very hard to make the point that these are the kinds of things that ought to come before planning and at least the Historic Review Board, even though the city is doing them on our behalf, they're not coming before the Historic Review Board. And we think that we have some thoughts about how we want the historic sidewalks of San Juan to look. We asked for not making every sidewalk white. Well, down on Pierce, the other end of Franklin Street, we have 4 feet plus sidewalks, all white. Some dye could have been placed in them, something black, to make them look older. Of course, we all went up in flames when we saw those yellow things that could have been gray for handicapped access. And then here we go poking signs into the street that say 15 miles an hour. that could have been handled a different way with a little more thinking than just, and then, of course, I don't even want to talk about just rushing in and putting that restroom at the end of the soccer field because it might be expeditious to hook it up to the sewer because the ground was open. So let's go a little bit slower when we place things on the sidewalks of San Juan or do things in San Juan. Thank you.
Well,
Duly noted, yeah, right, yeah.
We need to slow down.
The ordinance says that San Juan is 3rd Street is a 15-mile-an-hour zone.
Right.
I know and I understand that, but I'm just wondering, can
Well-
you still open your car door and get out, or just slam it
Well,
on the
they
side?
could have put them on the streetlights. Like, I've seen other cities, they put them on the streetlights with a
Yeah,
clamp.
nobody's
And
gonna
they-
pay
and
attention to
then you don't
signs
have
anyway.
Streetlights, poles, streetlights, 50-mile-an-hour sign. You know what I'm saying, Roger?
Just
But he's doing, I mean, he's just doing what they wanted him to do, slow the traffic down. But
Well,
it could have been done a little better.
you may want to
Thank you.
consider, having the Historical Resources Board talk about traffic bumps.
no, I would.
No,
not
you
have
go
thought-
down to Mexico and you got those topes that this big.
Oh, you bet.
I mean, you hit those things, you're going to be off the deck.
Well, I would never vote for those.
We are looking at traffic slowing devices on 4th Street, not speed bumps, but elevated crosswalks, an inch and a half at the width of a brick.
Those are humps.
About 10 feet.
Traffic humps, I
So
suppose.
that they just don't speed. We find on 4th Street, particularly between Monterey and Macomb, they're hitting up at 45,
But you also have some already on the street that stick up an inch and a half.
Yes. Now, 3rd Street has got the mini speed bumps, and so
Well-
it slows everything down anyway.
Need to
Of
grind
course,
them
we
off.
have the answer to that, is keep cars off of it. Go back to the
Bring
horses.
back horses, right? See, we still have the hooks on the pavement for them.
Anyway, and
Yeah,
then,
is that something you'd like, that was a serious comment about the 4th Street thing, is that something the strategic plan committee is actually going to be pursuing?
Yes.
Is that something that you would like to come before the historic resource board?
any improvements,
No, but what you need is a letter, so you got a record, a track, and to say, hey, this is what we want for the Historical Resources Board. That goes to the Strategic Planning Committee and say, look, since you guys are doing all this stuff, consider this, and let them come back with some digestive ways of doing this. See, talking is not going to do it. You need, like with the parking. We've been talking for years. 4 years I've been here. Okay, I wrote a letter. That letter went to council. You saw the results of that letter. That was a Planning Commission action. We made it happen. You want something to happen? Just draft a letter for the Historical Resources Board. We'll approve that next meeting, and then we give that to Strategic Plan Committee.
can we do it tonight at the Planning Commission?
Well,
To
if you
write a
want,
letter?
that makes it a Planning Commission action.
Not
Oh,
on-
that's
Not on the agenda, though.
Well, if something comes up that's so significant that it really can't be acted on another time, we can do it. We have to be unanimous, and it has to be pretty significant. And public health and safety, which is what we're talking about, is one of those kind of an issue. So we can put that down as a special action right now as to what you want to say or do.
Getting back to Matthew, the Strategic Committee is meeting next week,
That's why it's a special thing.
so I think we ought to go ahead and
Okay,
try
no,
to do
we're not
something about it
dealing with
tonight.
Matthew, we're not dealing with the committee, we're
Okay.
dealing with the commission.
Commission.
You got, what would you like to do?
We write the letter?
Yeah, well, it'll be a planning commission now because the historical review board would end it at 6:30.
I know.
I would
Could-
say
could I
anything
have-
that you do on the historical area should be coming from the historical board. If that's signed on the historical, it should be coming in
In the
front of
historic
it.
district.
Anything that's put in or on the ground in
Right.
the
In the
district
in the
should be
historic
brought to this thing.
district.
And it only takes one meeting, we can solve the problem.
But I mean, otherwise we're getting everybody's idea of what they want, what's
Right.
convenient, and that's not what we want to see in this town. So the action would be to the strategic planning, whatever you call it. The planning commission has identified some serious problems in the historical district, placement of signs and other things in or on the thing without review by the Historical Resources Board. And we feel this is significant. Do they have any ideas for reducing traffic speeds?
You're talking about Fourth Street.
Yeah.
Either street.
Fourth,
Oh.
their strategic is talking about Fourth.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were talking about
We're
Third.
talking about Third.
Yeah.
We're talking about Third
What
Street.
about Fourth? Do you want crosswalks?
Oh, wait, one at a time. One at a time.
Can we have Cara?
Well, I think you should have some kind of design review for any kind of infrastructure stuff that goes on. You're the Historic Resources Board, and what this town looks like, you know, how it presents itself. I think these things should be coming to you for review.
I mean, now, look, we have the problem with the county, right? They keep doing stuff and don't tell us.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so he had to go talk to some folks. We have the same problem. We have people in our own organization doing stuff without coming to the appropriate authority, being the Historical Resources
But
Board.
they aren't required to now, but I
Well, we're
want
gonna
them
make
to
it.
be required to.
That's, like I said,
Yeah.
don't worry about what's existing. Make it happen. So
Okay.
what we want is we want them
review
to
it.
review the situation that all projects in the historic district must be reviewed by the Historical Resources Board.
What about
In the historical district.
In the historical district, that's
Right.
a start.
All improvement project, all city improvement projects?
No.
Anything. You're in it's a historical district. It's going to look the way you want it because you made it happen. If you say, well, no, that one doesn't count, you know what's going to happen. We're going to have, 4-story Kentucky Fried Chicken tower or something. You've got to make it happen. No, I'm serious.
Okay.
I'm not
Yeah,
one.
I see.
There are people who do, and there are people who talk, and people who do, and this commission is a do group.
We're famous for that.
So let's maintain our.
I think that good suggestions, but I think you got to draw a fine line because the city council sometimes authorizes subsurface water lines and sewer lines and stuff like that.
But we can't do it on the historical
Safety,
district,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We can't do it on the
Not
historical.
surface, yeah.
But the rest of town, I mean, it's,
Can I just comment? I'm sorry, but when you do sewer lines and underwater lines, then there has to be new paving or new surfacing. And that is something that's aesthetic that the Historic Resources Board might have some comment on, like,
They're called traffic bumps.
well, or, like the sidewalks, putting in some kind of pigment to make it match the historic sidewalks.
And that can be done.
And scoring is important too. There's historic scoring we have on our sidewalks. That's not
Really?
followed. So, it's the aesthetics of it that people see when they come into town to try to keep it looking historic.
See, it
But it
isn't.
fits in.
It isn't quaint because we have old buildings. It's quaint because we have a setting.
right.
And as soon as you put a bunch of junk, you take out the settings and you ruin the view of the buildings. Yeah, and again, we can write this. Ultimately, we can write a policy. You get the strategic folks to take a look at it also, but we get a policy and that'll tell you, except for these items, except for emergencies, etc.
I would caution that you don't want to step too far because sometimes there are things that we have to act within a time frame to get these sidewalks to prevent accidents and stuff. And if we have to wait till an HRB or a plan commission to get approval to score, it's counterproductive. And I think you've got to use some common sense.
That concrete's gonna age anyway over the period of time anyway.
I mean, I think in general terms, you can say that when we do remove concrete and replace it, is to inject lead black into it, and that gives it a nice darker color. And it's not white. And lead black is a standard procedure that we use to darken concrete up.
Yeah, but you're dealing with concrete for 1929 versus today's concrete's a way different
It
ballgame.
is not going to
The texture is good too.
There's stuff you could put in it, but it's a costly project.
But if you
It's like $80 a pound just for the color.
Yeah, but if somebody wants something in San Juan Bautista, it's just the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Because we let somebody come in and put an undesigned building in there or pull a trailer in there because it's the cheapest, if we don't have standards, they could do that. So things happen because the commission speaks for the city, recommends to the city council.
I think we should do it for the whole town. When
Well-
there's an improvement that...
But where do you want to start? You are the Historic Resources Board
or
chairman.
you come to the Historic Resource, tonight I am.
And so,
Come before the Historic Resources Board just review of what...
But you
like the informal project review is for information, for education. It doesn't necessarily
But you
mean
just can't
action.
do that
We want to
because you
know
hold
what's
up the
going
city.
on and make, maybe the people installing the 15-mile-an-hour signs didn't even think of hanging them on the light post.
I'm all for down in the historical district. The city has the responsibility for the rest of the town to make sure they get the signs in the proper place by state law. These signs were not by state law. They just put them in the hole, in the sidewalk, wherever they thought they could put them without going through the proper
And
channel.
dug a hole in the sidewalk.
I don't care about
And
that. They
planted
had a plan,
the
yeah,
post.
which they could have put
What
on
kind
the
of
street
post?
light.
Yeah, okay. I'll go back to the Historic District, and can
now
you
the other
help,
thing
Ms.
too is you
Rector?
may want to attend the meeting of the strategic people.
I intended to go.
And identify
Yeah.
yourself because they're all
I
city
will.
folks, and say, look, we need to do this. And we can follow up with a letter for the record.
All
But I
right.
mean, the thing is, that'd be the place to start, and then we start writing the policy.
All right,
And make it simple.
thank you.
If it's above the ground, bring it in.
You're so good. We are making a good
Okay.
team here.
Does that help? I know where you're coming from, but I mean, I just wanted to make sure that we didn't talk about it, but we did something about it.
Now, back to the wayfair finding update. Whenever San Juan has a chance to do its own thinking, I am in favor of it. So branding should come from us. My thought.
You get a package for the Historic Resources Board next time of information like that. Thoughts on branding. But yeah, I think that's the proper way to do it.
Thank you.
Anytime.
I just want to do the strategic plan committee is just an advisory body, and we're just basically there to facilitate relationships between people to deal with certain projects.
Well, we're looking for advice.
We won't ever be taking any action on our own to do anything. So
No, but it's a
what we'd like to do is why I brought that up is that we would like to have you involved so that if you would like to review projects that we're trying to facilitate between others, they then know that they can bring it to you. So that's all I meant by that.
No, you did.
And one other point is that when you're talking about proactive versus reactive things that would go before the Historic Resources Board, such as an emergency happens with water, they have to tear up sidewalk and they have to put something back in. You could be proactive by saying, when you do put sidewalks back in an instance like that, it has to be dyed, it has to be scored, it has to be certain things. You have the power to do that, but that's something that you should do proactively ahead of time.
That's what I mean,
So that they don't have to
policy.
wait a month to fix
Right.
it before
Okay.
to fix the gaping hole in the sidewalk. So
That's what I mean by policy.
Now,
Yeah.
right,
That's all written out.
Yeah.
right now, David Medeiros, planner, goes to the strategic committee. Does Vanda also belong? No. Okay, so that wouldn't be three of us if I went. Okay,
Or you're going for a different reason.
I'm going for a different reason, specifically
You're
this.
you're not going there for a planning commission issue, you're going there for a specific item to
Okay.
discuss.
And
And they're
then,
not taking action?
and then other times I go, I'm just a member of the public. All right,
But I think you ought to go first as the chairman of that body.
okay, this week, next week, Tuesday
And
night.
that's a meeting to identify and prioritize projects. We still have not started anything really. This is simply, when we met last week with the Government and Communications Subcommittee, we went through all the things in the general plan that were identified as possible projects, and we discussed them, put down things about them that we might want to talk about, we might want to get involved, and then we listed, we're going to prioritize those and bring them back on Tuesday as the things that we identified as what we would like to work on. So we still haven't started anything yet, we're just simply listing, narrowing them down.
So maybe we, on future agenda items or somewhere along, we ought to be apprised each time the strategic,
If they're going to be working on your project, that should go to this Historic Resources Board.
and be on an agenda
And
and
then
reviewed.
Mr. Madero, Commissioner Madero, since he's on that committee, he can tell us what's happening over there.
Okay,
In fact, we'll make a point when we see him again to ask him if he would officially go put him on the agenda in what's happening on that committee. Because, like, let's face it, council members are all assigned to committees,
Yes.
and let's just ask him if he wants to will accept being assigned to that committee to officially report. So it'll be an agenda item, just like any of the other reports. If there's nothing to say, no problem, but if there is,
I think that would,
I'll
the
keep us
more
posted.
chances we can get something out to the public, the better understood I think our job would be.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's it for wayfinding?
Well, before, I was just asking one more question. So, in the packet that you want on branding, what would you like things like cost projections, timetables, just basic information on what we would have to pay to get a company to do branding for us?
I guess.
'Cause you gotta pay
This-
for
this-
branding.
this-
I mean, we don't employ a graphic artist. I don't trust my graphic art skills to put together a branding logo for
But
us. So.
coming up with a design for branding should be our problem.
I just mean, what would you like in that packet? Like, what would you like city staff to
There's-
pursue as far as?
Can you help me understand it?
May I make a comment?
Sure.
Chris Margarina, 97 4th Street. Matt is absolutely right. Branding is not something that you get a few people from town to come in and cobble together some ideas. I would strongly suggest that you consider working with the county and the city of Hollister, who have allocated now, whose city council's now allocated $50,000 for advertising, for promotional work, for the county to integrate some of this stuff. So it's a unified presentation. It's not a mishmash that goes out to the general public and is not professional looking. We're potentially dedicating an awful lot of money, and we want to make the most of that. And in my personal opinion is that a graphic artist, a professional who's done this sort of work, needs to be employed to make the most of that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Brenda mentioned that we might want to talk to the designer who's worked on the county-wide plan, because that company also does branding for specific cities. So that's one of the things that could be looked into as part of this, what you want me to report back on. So that's why I'm asking, would you like me to look into that and see what it would cost and, what would be involved in that?
What you
how
want
we can
is,
input?
what you want is a report. Right now, Planning Commission is getting a report, but you need a more detailed report, the Historic Resources Board, because we say, yeah, signs are nice, but the Historic Resources Board says they're nice, but there's not a historical view.
And
So we
fair
want-
practice is that whatever Matt comes to your recommendation, you have to recommend it to city council, because then it involves appropriations and financial considerations.
Well, basically, just have, okay, I think a report then should consist of what branding's all about, what the different ideas are happening, basically what's happening in the world of branding, of what's happening in the world of wayfinding. I think the Historic Resources Board needs more detail than the Planning Commission does. We can approve a sign, but, I'm sorry,
Very brief. This wayfinding thing, this has been going on for years as well, like the sign ordinance. And so.
sign ordinance got adopted though.
I know. Anyway, there was a professional graphic artist in town who offered to voluntarily do some designs for us. I mean, this was about 5 years ago or something like that. I don't know if that's still on the table, but it's maybe something you'd like to.
And who was that?
What's her name? Yeah, Shipper.
Oh, Kathy Shipper,
Yeah.
professional designer.
Okay, but I still think that because a sign can be done with sign code, but historical signs is a much more sensitive issue. So I think that the Historic Resources Board needs a much in-detailed pitch on the wayfinding, and it's basically a discussion not just of how to get there, but a good-looking sign on how to get there.
One more comment. We're a Preserve America community, and they have grants, and that's what we were working on when I was working on it, and they actually have grants for wayfinding, so that's another source.
I'll leave that one to staff. I know you're looking for money.
She doesn't do it anymore.
So anyway, so I'd say the wayfinding issue here is, it's good to know, but I think it's more, I think it's more sensitive to the Historic Resources Board than the Planning Commission. We're in it, but I think your historical board is much, much more detailed. Okay?
No? Yes.
Consensus to go to the next one. We need a vote on this one. A development agreement. And I'll ask staff to explain development agreements to you. You in the mood?
In our municipal code, the chapter 10-06 has outlined the procedures for development agreements. And most people say, what is a development agreement? It's really an agreement between the city and a prospective person who wants to do some development. And you'd say, well, why do they want some type of development agreement? Well, consistency with the development is they like to have some type of assurance or continuity that when they go in to invest a certain amount of money into the community, that there's going to be consistency with the fees, the procedures, and the ultimate outcome of the property, so that they can plan effectively when they're doing all of their financial arrangements as well as their contracts and negotiations to achieve that directly. So development agreements are more contractual in things where it specifies certain time limits, certain fundings, and it fixes development impact fees, the duration of that project, and that so it gives them some type of continuity. And as you can see, I attached a sample of a development agreement here where we put it together, and it shows the complexity of it, where you get into a variety of issues, and it gets into the definitions as well as the contractual obligations, applicable laws, and then it starts to develop the fees that are going to be subject to it during the duration of this development, the contributions that they're going to make to offset some of the impacts through the mitigations. It goes into a lot of the amendments of how the timing of the development is going to take place. And from projects from time to time where we see the need to service those projects with a development standards of a sewer or water line, we look down the line into our 10, 15, and 20-year capital improvement program, and we say maybe those lines should be over capacity, oversized, to handle the future projections of what we're going. Then these agreements have to be cranked into that thing to where who's going to pay for that oversized things? How much parkland is it going to get? If they're going to develop a parkland, how's it going to be developed? What kind of thing? So these are all things that are in the nuts and bolts of any type of development where you crank into it, and then the development is signed, agreed, approved, and then it's recorded. And then it's a binding agreement between the developers and the people that's going to propose a development and the city of San Juan Bautista.
I figure if somebody's putting out millions of dollars, the investors want to know that it's stable, because in some places you get a new council, they didn't like the project to begin with, and they voted out after all this money, and the guy's been starting to develop. And so this says, hey, what you're going to need, both sides, everybody's happy. And especially the developer, because you need stability. You need stability in government, you need stability of your ordinances and the conditions of approval.
I think that's the underlying issue that I've seen in most development agreements I've seen, is they just want some stability and continuity so that they can achieve their ultimate goal, is just to do a project that meets the city's design criteria.
Okay, so this was not an action item, it was more of an informational. I would expect that when this project is ready for approval, if and when, there would be such a document.
Why does it mention Mello-Roos? Isn't that paying taxes over time?
The Mello-Roos district is a district that identifies the services that are going to be provided, and it subdivision or that benefit district, and they would pay for that service.
But it doesn't relate to impact fees.
No.
No, that's
It's
separate.
very similar to the lighting and landscaping district that we have on the Creek Ridge subdivision. We identified that service, and then each year we hold a public hearing, we establish a budget for it, and then that, we send it over to the county controller's office, and he attaches those assessments to their ad valorem tax rate, and it occurs into their tax bill.
So that you talking a school for a house now is about $8,000 per house? Average? Impact fees?
Yeah, it depends on
On the square footage?
On the square footage, yeah. Right now, the state has developed school impact fees, and the basic rate is $2.97
Yeah.
a square foot. So the bigger the house, the more the impact fees.
The figures in these documents, are they based on our current numbers? They're not boilerplate from somebody else? This document has been prepared?
When we documented that, I felt that we should put in our fees, typically what is going to be affected.
And what does our lawyer think about this?
They've gone through it. We met with George Thatcher and Deborah Mall, and we had some changes with the staff here, and we changed the conditions that they want. We took some out, we put some back in, and it was designed to kind of fit the overall nature of what's going to take place.
So what's the average building permit sale one now? 38,000?
The last four that they're right around $24,000 to $26,000, depending on the size of the home.
Because you take like Giro and Hollister.
And the village.
Yeah, they're about 60 to 70,000.
60 to 70, yeah.
And
That's amazing.
when would we anticipate this form coming before us as an action item?
Generally, we like to see that just when you're starting to entertain the tentative map, because then that way we know the conditions, we know the phasing, we know the timing, and we know basically the conditions of approval, so we can correct that.
So I missed your first understanding.
Generally, it'll occur at the tentative map stage.
Tentative map. Okay.
Sound good? Okay, what's next on the agenda? Future agenda items. Anything anybody wants to put on the agenda?
I'd like to hear more about the brewery more often.
Oh, yes. Okay, I was going to call him today because they were supposed to be in there last weekend. The construction crew that is staking it said that they needed the site cleaned up, and Mr. Hibbolino said that he would get the site cleaned up this weekend. Nothing happened, and I was going to call him today, and I kept him busy, but tomorrow I'll call him because they've got to get that site cleaned up before they stake it. He's got the contractor, and the contractor's ready to roll, but he can't do anything until he gets some grade stakes.
But does that have to come back to us? Or we didn't approve that whole parking lot, did we?
Yeah,
We didn't have the light. We didn't approve the lighting or the landscaping.
No, you
Or
approve the parking lot and the grades. I got to bring the landscaping and the lighting.
lighting.
Yeah.
What about the design?
The design is,
Hardscape design.
the
Part of
landscaping,
landscape.
yeah, the landscaping plan, and they submit it to us, and then we'll be bringing that to you. That's the
So-
last phase.
And then I hate to bring this one up, but what's happening with our storage locker units?
Oh, yeah, right.
He still has to put that sidewalk in the back
Yeah, he
and all that.
started.
I see he put some in there.
He put some sidewalk there, and then he got the fire sprinkler systems, and then he's brought it in, and now he's working on I would say the northeast quadrant of inside the building, and he's doing the sprinkler systems in there.
What kind of liability are we if he doesn't get that sprinkler system in when they patched it 6 years ago? Is San Juan in trouble if that building catches fire and the sprinkler system is not in?
No, I think our liability is kind of mute, but I think he understands that he's responsible to put that thing in, and that's the condition. I think the last time we had it, we identified, I think, that 27 issues. We'll go through that. I'll get with Matt and we'll update that thing and bring it back to you.
Okay. Anything new on water? Anything new on the water?
We're meeting with a hydrologist, and we've identified the sites, and we're going through to get a contractor to start drilling test wells.
Okay. I saw that down at the Windmill Market, they're starting to sell water again. Is that? I thought for a long time they weren't using it. Do you know anything about that?
Well, our tests of nitrates for the last 2 months have been below the 45 milligram per liter things. They vary from 38 to 41, you know, and in some cases our blending ratio coming out of the reservoir is down to 32 to 34, you know. We're achieving below the standards, but the health department has still not lifted the compliance on it.
But they can still sell the water?
Yes.
Okay.
You mean the water that they get from us that they provide to people in the bottles?
Theoretically, they reverse osmosis, I think. But if the reverse osmosis worked, then...
Some of the restaurants have put the RO systems in, and Windmill has put one in, and we're still providing bottled water to the schools.
Wow. Okay, just curious there.
Is there any way that the city can do something about the mistletoe problem in this town? It's killing trees. We all know that the tree across the street from my house just crashed, missing the house, a historic house by inches.
Oh, yes.
And it's been suffering from mistletoe. There's one across the street in city property that needs to go. It's in city property. The state park won't take any care of it. How are we going to handle this mistletoe problem that is spreading? And we're asking people to do landscaping, and then we have a disease that's decimating the landscaping we have. How do we handle this?
Make sure that we pick trees that
Like grapefruit.
mistletoe. I know I have a tremendous problem at the Valverudi Park, and those trees are just infected with it, you know.
Shouldn't we take out trees that belong to us that are infecting other trees?
All you got to do is cut the mistletoe out.
I know, but once you cut something with a blade, you take it some other tree and...
But isn't mistletoe a vine?
Right. It's planted by a bird.
It grows into the
Most of them
back
are
branch.
birds will plant there.
Right.
The most effective way is you cut the mistletoe off, and then you use some Clorox to disinfect the thing, and then it won't come back and grow. If you don't, it'll come back and grow.
That's how I save my trees across the street, the 2 oak trees. I just cut the mistletoe out.
Can we get a grant or some way for the city to approach getting rid of the mistletoe that's causing the...
Well, I have, after the tree fell down at the Lux Library, we solicited 3 quotes for some tree trimming to come and top some of these trees and get them down. And we're wrestling with it because the price came in substantial.
I know, it's a...
Okay, commissioners, any last minute comments?
It goes back to we really don't have enough revenue to meet those demands. I keep harping on why, and this council, this planning commission stepped forward there is just to say, hey, we need more investment in more commercial development because our sales tax is down in the 17th percentile, and it's drastic, and we're not getting the sales tax from our merchants compared to other jurisdictions.
So the bedroom
Can I ask
tax...
Roger a question?
Yeah, excuse me.
Do we have a tree ordinance? So,
We have
Yes.
we have a selective tree list we put up.
so some of these oak trees that are along the road, they can't just go in and chop them down? Or can they on their
Well,
property?
people understand we have a tree ordinance and they go on site and they have
We
this whole rigmarole.
We have a tree removal ordinance that they have to petition and get permission, and the fee is between $50 and $150.
So we do have a tree ordinance, but I don't know if it says the size of a tree.
I'm sure it's all, it's in the Muni Code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, no other commissioner comments? City manager comments? Assistant planner comments? Good. Okay, I'll call for a motion for adjournment.
You got to do it, Pat.
I'll second.
All in favor? Opposed?
Good thing out here to second.
We're here,
This
8:30.
is, we're in a real